Partial shade plants or vegetables that you can grow. Now, first of all, Holly, what is the definition of partial shade?
Partial shade is basically if you have less than 8 hours of full sun. So you might have something behind a garage or a shed, maybe a tree covers the sun in the afternoon. It doesn't mean like you get 2 hours of sun or something a day or no sun. It means that you just have less sun.
Full sun is all day long, 8, 12 hours, however long the sun can shine on the location. Partial shade is about 3 to 6 hours, preferably higher on that spectrum than lower. Though we'll talk about different vegetables that do tolerate that lower spectrum of that 3 to 4 hours rather than the 6 hours available. Now, Holly, you have a saying about a good guideline to follow what works best and where and how.
Right. So the saying is that if you grow it for the root or the fruit, you need full sun. So that would include like tomatoes, peppers, squash, any root crop, then you need the full sun. But if you don't grow it for the root or fruit, you can have the partial shade.
And that's a good thing to keep in mind when it comes to should I or should I not plant this particular vegetable in this particular location. Now, we've got a number of these plants that we're going to talk about, and we're not going to go through all of them. There's 30 on our list, but we're going to go through some of the more common ones that you may be wondering, can I plant or can I not plant in partial shade? Now, first one I want to talk about is asparagus. Number one, asparagus is a perennial, meaning it'll come back year and year and year after year, 20 to 50 years in some realms. If you have a partial shade area that doesn't or is not really good for anything else and you want something to stay there permanently, asparagus would be the choice to grow in that particular location.
Right. So asparagus, like you said, it's going to grow there for many years, and it doesn't take much maintenance. Sometimes you might have to fertilize it or something, but it is a pretty low maintenance vegetable, and homegrown asparagus is delicious.
And whenever you look at partial shade areas, early on in the growing season, everything is full sun because there's no leaves on the trees. The sun is coming up in a different spot than it would be in 30, 60, 90 days from the current time you're out in the yard. So you want to be aware of how things look now, how things will look in July, August, September, and keep that in calculations on what's going to be best. Now, again, asparagus, permanent spot there for a long time. And with all these, it's not another guideline in addition to your saying, Holly, they're not going to grow to magnitude that they would in full sun. If you're growing these, they're going to be slightly smaller than they would be if they were in full sun. So keep that in mind. Another one that maybe beets is another one that we like to grow, and we have found success to grow them in partial shade, yes, as well as full sun.
Mm-hmm. But the biggest thing I think with beets is that you want to grow it in very loose soil, and we grow ours. Well, now we'll be growing them in a raised bed, but we grew it in a huge grow bag. How big is that grow bag? 60 gallons?
60 gallons.
So it's 3 feet across, and we put nice, loose, loamy soil in there, and it allowed us to grow some nice beets. Another
one that works well in a grow bag raised bed is carrots. Carrots work very well in partial shade as well as full sun. Another one that we have had success with very well, and you can find it if you just search the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com in the search bar, is celery. Celery does very well in partial shade conditions. Cabbage is another one. One thing here, two things here that we cannot grow, so we cannot verify if they do well in partial shade, is broccoli and cauliflower. We have never had success in growing them.
But it's going to be less of a chance to bolt faster if you grow in the partial shade. Broccoli and cauliflower like the little bit of the cooler weather. So if you have it in partial shade, it's going to grow a little bit better and longer.
Right. A couple of years, I guess it was 5 or 6 years ago, we had beautiful plants, which I thought was Brussels sprouts. And then we planted them, and they began to form heads, and the heads were no bigger than $50. And that was the last time we attempted to, we had a seed mix up, and then we planted broccoli that we thought was Brussels sprouts, and didn't help it, didn't matter, didn't work very well at all. We've seen it successfully grown. We've just never done it ourselves in that instance.
Now, here's another one that is actually a perennial is horseradish.
Yes.
And that is something that you can grow. It can be a little bit invasive. Not really, but you do have to, it's going to keep coming back year after year. If you do grow it, you don't have to grow a lot, because horseradish from the ground is pretty strong, very potent. So, but definitely something you can try.
Interesting fact about horseradish: you get that intensity, that pepperness flavor, whenever you shred it. It gets oxidized, and that's when the aroma or the intensity happens. You can eat horseradish like a carrot, and you won't get that, what we're familiar with, that intensity flavor, if you just eat it like a carrot. But if you shred it, that's when that peppery taste comes to be. Another one is kohlrabi, which you can start indoors. You can buy from your garden center in starts, or from seed. We grow the green kind. There is a burgundy variety, but we've chosen to stick with the green. Explain, Holly, to those who are not familiar with kohlrabi. It's a very unique and uncharacteristic type of vegetable.
Sure. So kohlrabi is of the brassica, or the cole family. To me, it tastes like a radish almost, but it doesn't look like a radish. It looks like it grows in the ground, but it does not grow in the ground. It grows above ground. It looks like a root crop. When you pull it, when you harvest it, it looks like a root crop, but it just does not. It does have like a bulb with some leaves on top, but it grows above the ground.
If you've never seen it, do a search online. You will be very intrigued by the look of it.
It's very popular in a lot of like German dishes. Yeah.
You can pickle it as well. Kale, at the leafy green. Leaf lettuce is a very easy one to grow. Now, with leaf lettuce, it grows well. Romaine grows well, too, in partial shade. Now, there's a green romaine and a red romaine, in which you can choose to get the starts from, or you can start them by yourself. We have done both, and we have found that the red romaine lettuce tends to not bolt as quickly as the green does. You get about a week or two longer before the bolting occurs, before it gets bitter. And when the leaves and it gets bitter, what is occurring there, it's in that central stalk of the leaf. You'll see that main stem when you pluck a leaf off. Just remove that stem and then eat the leaves itself. You can eat lettuce all summer long, as long as you take a little more effort to remove that center stalk, that center vein in that leaf that contains the bitterness.
Right. So we also have parsnip, and so then we have mustard greens and mizuna. Those are both greens.
Garlic can be grown in partial shade. Again, not as large as it would be in full sun.
And then parsnip. That's, if you've never had a parsnip, it's a root crop. To me, it tastes like a more earthy carrot.
It's a very
distinct taste. Yes.
Peas can be grown early in the spring, late in the fall. Partial shade very easily. Potatoes can be grown in partial shade, as well as radishes. And your not favorite, rhubarb, can be grown in partial shade.
Right.
So, spinach and Swiss chard. Swiss chard, we talked about it last week on the program. Swiss chard is a spinach substitute that does not go to bolt unless conditions are very unfavorable. It will go to bolt, go to seed the second year, but Swiss chard is a very good plant to grow, and you don't need a lot of Swiss chard to get a lot of Swiss chard leaves.
Right, and then we also have turnips and
rutabagas. However, we don't have success growing those in the spring. The days get too long and it gets too warm, and they go to bolt. We have found turnips take 60 days to reach maturity. Rutabagas take 90 days. We find in Zone 5 here in southeast Wisconsin, if we grow them about the early to mid portions of August, we get very, very nice turnips and rutabagas. By the time the day lengths get shorter and the temperatures get colder and we get some frost on them, because it makes them sweeter, and it works very well. And a lot of these plants, if you allow a frost to occur on them late in the season, they will become sweeter as the sugars release in the plant. So that's just a number of different plants in which you can grow in partial shade. Now, notice we left out, because doesn't qualify, the peppers, the tomatoes, the eggplants, the cucumbers. Now, if you have an area in your backyard where you are limited on the amount of sunlight you get, then you can grow, if you really desperately want to grow tomatoes, grow a cherry variety in the sunniest spot you possibly can find. Cherry varieties tend to develop better than a full tomato in partial shade because the duration from flower to fruit harvest is about 10 to 12 days shorter. So you can keep that in mind if you're really wanting to grow tomatoes in partial shade. Also, you can use grow bags from rootmaker.com. Use coupon code TWVG and get 10% off your entire order. And you can move or put these things wherever you want in your front yard, backyard, side yard, wherever that the sunlight is at.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.